Thanks so much for joining book club today. Don't forget to like and subscribe and get ready to hear from some doulas who know squat. Okay, so this is week 1 of When Baby Brings the Blues. We're going to be talking about different postpartum mood disorders, how to recognize them, and how to help with them. This book was really, really, really helpful for me. So I'm excited that we're going to be sharing it with more people and learning more about it. In the introduction, the main thing that I kind of wanted to point out, because we'll just be here for like 2 seconds and we'll move on, is 15 to 20% of new mothers are diagnosed with postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety. And that's actually on the lower end of the stats that I've read. I've seen up to 50%. I think the highest stat I saw was 51. Oh, and I was also going to quote Helen Keller. It's the very, very end of the introduction on page 3. It says, as the wise Helen Keller once said, although the world is very full of suffering, it is also full of overcoming it. I love that. I thought that was really sweet. Okay, so chapter 1, the myths and realities of postpartum mental illness. So did you guys feel pretty knowledgeable about postpartum mood disorders previous to reading this?
I felt like I'm somewhat familiar with postpartum mood disorders, but kind of recognizing it in other people is not a area that I'm strong in. So cool.
Okay, awesome.
Based on personal experience with such a range of postpartum mood disorders, I've done a little research on it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm fairly comfortable with it.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so I kind of wanted to start out with some myths. Here on page 7, there's a chart at the top, or a box, that kind of lists out 5 different myths of postpartum depression and kind of talking about, the truth or the untruth of these myths. Okay, 1, feeling badly is a normal part of being a mother. No.
Yeah, I think that it's really hard to determine that line between the normal of struggles of being a mother and beyond that.
That's a better way to put it than just like no.
Yeah, because there's some, baby blues, can sometimes feel badly, missing sleep, things like that.
Right.
Mourning the life that you had before.
It's a huge change. So anytime you're going through that kind of a life change, there's going to be badness of it.
So I kind of look at the word badly and say, wow, I need more information on if that's a myth or not. 2, if I tell anyone how I'm feeling, they will take my baby away.
Yeah, I think that's really rough to feel like you don't have that option of reaching out to someone because, I don't think that anybody's going to take your baby away for asking for help.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember thinking that, especially with my third, it got really bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is definitely a fear that I can understand. And you can see stories that people will post on Facebook as then this happened and it was crazy, and then everybody thinks, okay, well then that happens to everybody, and so then they're not asking for help. But statistically, very, very rare for something like that to happen, and most of the time it's temporary. They take the baby away until they know that it's safe for the baby to go home with you. You are able to go home together. So I don't know the exact statistics on how rare it is. I used to. But not right at this moment. So mostly myth, I would say, for that one. I should just pull myself up by my bootstraps. This is my favorite. For life.
I was gonna say, how often do we tell ourselves that? Whether it's postpartum or just generally.
That struggle to ask for help for anything.
Yes. So the picture that I saw online, where it said, how difficult is it for you to ask for help? And it was a picture of a man holding one side of the couch up, and the other side of the couch was being held by a wheelie chair. Level. You know, and it just kind of depends on who do you have around you to be able to help. You know, how accessible is it for you to have somebody so that you don't have to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. If I feel this badly, I am not meant to be a mother, and I'm a mother. What do they call that myth? Just right off the not true.
Yeah. I can remember thinking that many times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me too.
And it, you know, postpartum depression can be, at least for me, in my experience, but then a lot of times that I would think that as my kids were growing up. And then I had to go.
Great. Any thoughts on it?
I think that that's a very, very common.
Agreed. There are no safe treatments, so why bother getting help? This one was huge for me, where I was like, well, nothing can be done about it, so why would I go ask anybody for help? This is just something you have to go through.
There's so many options.
Turns out
many options.
there's so many options, which we'll go over. So we'll cap that one off to being a rather large myth as well. Okay. So then I wanted to turn to page 17. We're mostly, for this beginning part, going to be jumping from box to box, because what happens in between the boxes is a lot of description, and then in the box is a list of what you just spent a lot of time talking about. So jumping to the boxes is a really nice, they kind of did my questions for me,
Nice.
which was super convenient, and I literally just wrote down where all the tables were in my notes. Okay. Truth about postpartum depression. 1, it is not normal to feel down for a long time or continuously sad after you have a baby. So it's basically answering the questions from the myth. Having postpartum depression is not a reason for anyone to take your child from you. Depression is a real illness, and you are really suffering. You are not a weak or lazy person. I felt so lazy when I was like, I'm too tired to get up in the morning kind of thing. That was one of my big things. I just didn't want to get up in the morning at all to start with. The idea of starting the day was, ugh. Being depressed may make you think you are an inadequate mother, and it may make it hard for you to enjoy motherhood, but you will see the entire experience in a different light once you feel better. Very true. There are excellent, safe, and effective treatments that can and will help you feel better. Anything you want to add to any of those statements? Pretty much a synopsis of what we already talked about. Okay, so that's chapter 1, because it's really just kind of an intro of introducing us to what postpartum depression is. They talk mostly about postpartum depression here, but we really do cover quite a lot of different postpartum disorders later on in the chapters. Okay, chapter 2 is Are You at Risk? And this is kind of going over the different risk factors. It goes over some different biological risk factors, family history, psychological. Like, I really thought it was interesting that it talks about negative thinking patterns. So if you tend to be more of a negative thinker, you're more likely to have it, which makes sense. Thyroid disorder, which is really interesting. Perfections. Did any of these stand out to any of you guys? Same views.
Just find it interesting how much habit thyroid disorders can play on everything with early motherhood specifically.
Yeah.
And they're so common, and they can go undetected so easily.
Yes. I'm having a full panel run on Monday. It's fun stuff. limited support, financial strain, disappointment in the baby's gender.
Yeah, that's something that I feel like is not talked about enough because, like, there was, I don't even remember where I was reading it a few years back, but it's like, you have permission to mourn the baby that you wanted to have.
Mhm.
And it's like, even if it's not a gender disappointment, you kind of develop a mental image of your baby. And they don't always match up to that mental image, and it's okay to mourn that.
Yeah. Yeah, we shame people a lot for the weirdest stuff, don't we?
I think we shame ourselves a lot for those kinds of things, though.
That's true.
I think a lot of that shame is internal. Nobody else might have any. You might have no idea that I'm upset about this or that I'm sad about this. I keep telling myself, well, baby is healthy. Why should I be upset that baby's
Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah, that makes sense. Complications with your pregnancy or delivery, there's a lot of studies behind that for sure. Especially if you felt like a lack of control in either of those situations. Maternal age, unwanted or unplanned pregnancy, breastfeeding issues, so many different things here. Jumping to page 41 because it's chart. I really like how this was divided out. It's got risk factors that you can control and then risk factors that are beyond your control. So I kind of thought that it would be good to go through and talk about what the different things are and what kind of suggestions you would have to be able to control those risk factors. And then for the ones that are, beyond your control, we'll just go over them because they're beyond your control. There's nothing that you can do about it. Okay. I might have been very young for condoms. Okay, so depression and anxiety in pregnancy if you are still pregnant. So what kind of things can kind of help you control that risk factor?
I mean, my go-to is usually counseling for that one, especially if you're pregnant, depending on what you're comfortable taking, what your doctor and advice for discussing. Counseling is really good.
Mm-hmm. No. Going outside, eating healthy foods, trying to sleep as much as you can. The things that you do that's like the most basic level of self-care is going to be really important for helping to monitor that stuff.
But I do want to point out that when you're in the depths of depression, depending how bad it can be, even those things sometimes feel impossible. Having grace with yourself for today, I have, instead of 10 stings, I have 3 stings. And so I'm going to do the best I can with it. I'm not going to be hard on myself and have a later on negative self-speech about what I did with my 3 stings. But I only had 3 today.
Yeah, it's like Dr. Brewer talks about. He's a nutritionist that I always refer to. If you're aiming to be healthy, but today you are going to have a candy bar, get one with nuts in it, and that's great, right? If you need to be eating protein, but you really don't like cooking, let's have some chicken nuggets. Chicken nuggets or candy bars the most healthy thing for you? No. Did you get the food down that you needed and some protein? Yes. And then maybe when you're starting to do that, you'll start to feel better. And then your capacity to have a fully cooked, really healthy meal is more likely. Maybe you don't want to go outside, but you can sit in a window, right?
One thing I heard a few years ago, and I wish I'd heard it when I was a young mom, was if you fill the dishwasher and the dishes aren't clean when you would go to take them out, it's not going to be the end of the world if you just run the dishwasher. I used to have to wash everything, put it in the dishwasher, take it back out. If anything was still not perfectly clean, rewash it, rerun the dishwasher. I was very methodical about this, learning that it wasn't the end of the world. You just have to rerun the dishwasher, rewash that linen clothes, whatever it is you need to do. Just keep yourself clean.
Exactly. Okay. Thyroid problems. I actually don't know a ton about helping with a thyroid that doesn't work very well. Do either of you?
There are nutrition things that can be done. There's medications that you can take. It really just depends on how you look at it and what your needs are.
you're likely going to need some help navigating it. So,
Doctor.
naturopath, like just anybody that a professional is going to be.
Let's not say anybody.
A professional that has experience with thyroid concerns.
Perfect. All right. This one I thought was kind of interesting that was put under risk factors you can control. Personality traits.
That is interesting.
Yeah, that's a little hard one.
I mean, you can control how you respond to certain things, but I mean, recognizing your personality traits and how you are likely to react to certain things, maybe you can make preparations, do and kind of head off any issues in that way. But like knowing that you're a perfectionist and like are going to have a hard time asking for help postpartum, maybe you are like talking to your partner about things that they can do that maybe won't irritate your perfectionism quite so much. That sort of thing.
Yeah.
Putting in safeguards beforehand so that you're not surprised later. But that takes a lot of self-awareness.
Oh, it does. I have a postpartum client that is very particular, very, very particular about the way that baby clothes are folded. And she's particular about a lot of things, but it's one of them. And each type of clothing is folded in a different way. And her husband came in and sat down, and he was like, teach me. And she was like, oh, it's just easier to just do it. And he sat down like Smeagol, and he was like, teach me. Like, it was so funny. And he finally pestered her into actually showing him how to do it. And then now he's able to help fold the laundry. You know, and that was kind of him being aware of her personality traits, which can be, you know, partners are wonderful for helping with this. Anybody who knows you really well, and, you know, if you know somebody that's going to be having a baby, going over and doing these things can be so changing for them, you know. We all support each other in that way, like having a village. We know each other's personalities pretty well at this point. Yeah. Negative thinking.
Big one. Learning how to change that thought process is a lot of work. It can be done, but a lot of work.
Yeah, it starts in your earliest childhood. Taking a class on it right now. So what kind of suggestions do you guys have for shifting to more positive thinking?
I guess it's really, I mean, the first step is recognizing when it happens. That's like, you can't change anything if you don't know that it's happening. And like, once you recognize that it's happening, the reframing.
Whenever you get into that internal monologue, sometimes it can just go on and on and on. And wherever you're at, when you realize that you're doing it, putting the brakes on it and just saying, no, I'm not doing it. So whatever your phrase becomes, we're not doing this today. Changing it up. But it takes training. It takes work. Worth it. Worth every second of it.
Yeah, sometimes it helps to add in a physical movement. You know, you're going down a mental spiral and you say, no, we're not doing this, tap. And it doesn't even have to be something that's going to be other people even going to notice it. You can just be a finger tap. But that, you know, for me, I'm kinesthetic. So that kind of movement, physicalness is a lot more helpful than trying to just do it mentally. Like I practice dream walking, and if I do the bit where you lean in and say, I am awake, and physically touch something, if I say I am awake out loud, it has a lot more of a benefit for me than if I just do it in my head and then focus on a texture. So kind of implementing that depending on what's most helpful for you. You can also make positive thought charts. You sit down and write down what the intrusive negative thought is, and then you write down some things that are true, and then using those truths, you write down a mantra that's positive to kind of come up with what your mantra is. So that's putting in more time. But if you practice it and then you go through, you say the negative thought and then you take out, read the what is true section and then do your mantra, you can start doing that fast enough that you kind of skip over and you can just go straight to.
I think a big part of figuring out what's going to work for you is finding out when you're having those. For me, my spirals tend to be everyone else is asleep. I'm trying to go to sleep myself. And then my thoughts start to spiral and they can get very out of control. And so finding something for me that has worked at that point when I'm like, I don't want to get out of bed. I'm going to disturb my husband. I'm going to can't wake somebody up, can't do this. And finding what works for me personally has been tremendously helpful in stopping that. But I know each of us has our different times or different patterns, but each can have a pattern to those.
Yeah. And if you're religious, worship music, for me, I can stop a spiral in its tracks if I just start saying God is good. Saw a sermon on it one time, tried it out. It's magnificent. At first you don't mean it, but then you continue and then you do.
I use breath first. So breathe in peace, breathe out joy. Joy, and it's just this constant mantra in my mind. And sometimes it'll be parts of a verse that I'm reading to study at that time. But frequently it's Jesus is the Prince of Peace. And my strength. And just this constant cycle of that in the brain into one moment.
Awesome. Love that.